After the Bix SA scene in Andor Season 2 occurred, a couple people, most notably Star Wars Theory, brought up the idea that Vader would never allow something like that to happen in the Empire, and that the Empire would never condone such a thing. In this video, I don't really want to get into a character study on Vader as a person, but I do want to talk about the Empire, and if something like SA could happen, or if it's happened in the past in Star Wars canon. The first argument I want to mention is that the Empire would not condone sexual assault and sexual violence. And while I do think they definitely don't condone it, and probably have rules about stuff like that, I don't actually think this idea means anything. Let's take an example of xenophobia in the Imperial Academy system. In the first book of the New Thrawn trilogy by Timothy Zahn, we see then Cadet Thrawn facing heavy taunting and insults from his fellow cadets. Eli Vanto, the cadet acting as his translator and attaché, then speaks on the Empire, saying that officially Imperials are not supposed to harbor anti-alien sentiment or act on it, but that many students and instructors still do, and nobody punishes them for it. And I think this is most likely what happens in the Empire with SA. What I'm basically saying is that while the Empire might say, yeah, don't sexually assault people, I don't think anyone's actually really getting in trouble if a random lieutenant on some backwater world does something like that. We see this in the Empire all the time. The Empire is very corrupt. There are tons of examples of people doing bad things and getting away with it in the Empire. Or with people doing good things and just not getting promotions for it, instead opting to give the person with political power the promotion. And I think the Empire cares a lot more about protecting its officers than the actual people who are vulnerable and getting taken advantage of. And I think we see this in the real world too, there are, I hate to say it, a lot of examples of people in power also doing bad things and getting away with it. I mean, in armies, this is also really common. In World War II, for example, the Germans did it to the Russians. Then the Russians began to rape German people when they pushed back into Germany. The Japanese did it when they were heading into China and Korea. It is something that happens quite a lot, where you see these authoritarian states coming in, basically, and the soldiers end up having power over the locals, and so they do things like SA. Obviously, not everybody does this, and the governments are not saying explicitly do this, but it's something very prominent, and there's enough cases of it where it's clear that it's happening. So I don't see it as unlikely where an Imperial lieutenant sees somebody who he sees as a illegal immigrant of sorts and decides to try and take advantage of her. Obviously, it's wrong, but I think it actually has historical backings. I also think it's quite accurate for the Empire to do, as some Moffs are said to have sex slaves, or in the canon book, Star Wars Lords of the Sith, we see a bunch of Imperial officers on Ryloth having young Ryloth teen girls basically serve as escorts, and it's implied that a lot of the advances from these officers is not exactly consensual. What I also want to note is that we have seen examples in Star Wars of this happening. I gotta say, in the original trilogy, I don't know what people thought was going on when, Jabba put Princess Leia in that golden bikini, but I'm sorry, pretty sure some weird stuff was going on there. And in other editions, there have been a couple of Star Wars books where authors have done way worse stuff. Of course, this is Legends, and it's some of the considered less than canon stuff even then, But there have been worse stuff in Star Wars. Obviously, it's the first time we've really seen it and had it said to be SA, but I do think we've seen slightly worse stuff. Also, I don't get the reaction because the way that everybody talks about it, they're saying like SA should not be a part of Star Wars. And while maybe I understand that, hey, in Ahsoka Season 2, we shouldn't have Thrawn try to sexually assault Ahsoka or something, you know. You don't need in every property. You don't need in the stuff that's explicitly for kids. But I don't think Andor is explicitly for kids. Yes, there will be kids who watch it, because, you know, Star Wars, most people consider it a kid's brand. But if you're gonna have it anywhere, it would be in Andor, the show that's very much not for kids. I mean, the first scene in Andor Season 1 is like Andor at a brothel. Like, this is not an appropriate show for kids. There are so many other things that I think you have to remove from Andor if you want it to make it kid appropriate, and nobody's really complaining about that stuff. I also want to say, if your kid is willing to watch Andor and is able to understand it and find it enjoyable, even though there is not a lot of action, I'm sorry, but I'm pretty sure your kid has the mental capacity to know what SA is and understand the implications. There are stuff in Andor that if your kid has undergotten those stuff, understands those things, then I feel like SA is not very hard for them to understand. And I think it's something that kids eventually do need to learn about. So, you know, if there's a kid who's that young who does not know what this is, maybe they should be watching Andor, or maybe they actually can comprehend what it is and should learn about it. I don't know. The main thing that I will say that I completely agree with from people like Star Wars Theories, there should have been a content warning. They've done it before, and I think it's weird that Disney didn't put like a little content warning mentioning there was going to be some talks about sexual violence and stuff like that in Andor. But yeah, that's really just what I want to talk about. This is a kind of different type of video, so if you enjoyed it, please let me know in the comments, give me a like, subscribe, join my Discord server, link in the description. Again, really hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and with this, peace out.